After the car accident left me in a vegetative state, I woke up to find my wife whispering with her first love at my bedside. So I decided to play along and continued pretending to be unconscious. By my bedside, they plotted to take over my company, poison my parents, and even make me disappear completely. Just when they thought their plan was perfect, I woke up. I had been in a coma for 3 months after the accident, and on this day, I planned to surprise my wife. She must have missed me terribly. After all, our relationship had always been great, and she loved me deeply. I managed to contain my excitement and continued pretending to be in a coma. But the next moment, I heard an unfamiliar male voice in the room. "Sister, is it appropriate to discuss these things in front of your husband? Who cares what we do? He's practically a living corpse now. He wouldn't notice even if there was an earthquake." Really? To prove her point, Xiao Ronxin didn't hesitate to kick me in the face. The pain at the tip of my nose made my consciousness clearer and made me realize that all of this was real. Faintly, I felt liquid flowing from the tip of my nose. The man was very surprised and said, Ran, you've heard him. Don't you feel bad about it?" Xiao Ronxin sneered and said disdainfully, "Feel bad? I only regret not getting his shares before he fell unconscious." As she spoke, she hooked the man's neck. "After he dies, I'll give you his company, and then use his accidental death insurance to hold a grand wedding. How about that? Do you really have no feelings for him at all anymore?" Xiao Ronxin coldly snorted. "Back then, he was the one who desperately begged me to marry him. I only agreed because he had some money, but you've always been the one I love in my heart." The man's voice was enticing. "Is what sister says really true?" Xiao Ronxin coquettishly said. "Oh my, don't you understand my heart yet? Sister, you just said he wouldn't feel it even if there was an earthquake. Why don't we?" Xiao Ronxin giggled, her laughter both carefree and unrestrained. Then the sound of rustling clothes could be heard nearby. Thinking about how the woman I deeply loved for 7 years would do such a thing right in front of me, my heart felt like it was being burned by raging flames. When the blood rushed to my head, I really wanted to get up immediately and strangle these 2 despicable people. But when I thought about my sweet and obedient daughter and the 10 billion in family assets, I instantly suppressed the anger in my heart. If I were to act on impulse now, I would definitely be the one to lose out. A child cannot be without a father, and these scumbags won't get a penny from me. Just thinking about having to split so much money with her and another man after divorce made me feel it wasn't worth it. Rationality took over my mind first. Since they love to play games so much, I'll play along until the end. The next day, I secretly contacted my assistant at the company. He told me that during my absence, Xiao Ronxin had replaced half of the company's key personnel. She had Gu Xiu take over the position of general manager, but he knew nothing and only yelled at employees. As a result, employees throughout the company were complaining bitterly. If this continues, the company will eventually change hands. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Xiao Ronxin was really audacious, throwing her weight around in the company. I had my assistant install hidden cameras in Xiao Ronxin's office, then reminded him not to tell anyone about my awakening. I want to see what this man actually looks like. In the evening, Xiao Ronxin called the nanny, saying not to wait for her for dinner as she needed to work overtime at the company. Her daughter was upset and cried plaintively in the video. "Mom, I miss you. Can you come home early today to read me stories? Be good, Xiaowei. Mommy has a lot of work to do. Let the nanny read you stories later. Despite her daughter's incessant crying, Xiao Ronxin ignored it and ended the video call. My heart trembled slightly, but I knew this wasn't the time to be emotional. I tilted my head back to hold back tears, then opened my phone to check the surveillance video I had connected earlier. Sure enough, the 2 of them were being intimate again in the office. Looking at this familiar face, it took me a while to recall that he was Gu Xiu, the junior who used to chase after Xiao Ronxin during university. "Sister, when can we be together openly? I don't want to keep sneaking around like this. Xiao Ronxin caressed Gu Xiu's face and said with a smile, "What's wrong? Getting impatient? So eager to marry me? Is it that as long as that old man doesn't die, I can't live with you? I just want to hold you when I miss you at night, but you won't even grant me this small request. How can you say you love me?" Gu Xiu pretended to be angry, pouting as if waiting to be comforted. Xiao Ronxin shyly kissed his lips and said with determination, "Don't worry, once I get Zhou Tinjian's company shares, I'll make him disappear. It's not difficult to make a vegetative person vanish, is it? Just hold on a little longer. Soon we can be together openly. Even though I no longer love Xiao Ronxin, hearing these words still pains my heart, as if it's being torn apart. The man roughly pinched her soft body, his eyes churning like turbulent waves. "Sister, I knew you loved me. I simply cannot believe that my wife of 7 years would say such things. But every word in the video seems to be etched into my brain, impossible to forget. I've been devoted to Xiao Ronxin for 10 years. Before marriage, to win her over, I spent countless money on houses, cars, and everything else. But she was still unsatisfied, saying that men are just good at pretending, and what's easily obtained won't be cherished. Who could have imagined that a respected company boss would follow a woman around like a dog every day? There were plenty of people who mocked and belittled me behind my back, but I hardly cared. If the woman I love could just look at me one more time, I'd die content. Perhaps Xiao Riangxin was moved by my sincerity, or perhaps she had grown tired of playing around and wanted to settle down. After 3 years of patient waiting, she finally accepted my proposal. To prove my sincerity, I gave her half of my assets and 30% of the company's shares. Even though I knew she might not love me as much, I firmly believed that if I treated her with genuine care, she would eventually see my dedication, and when that time came, everything I did would be worth it. But reality struck me hard. Actually, on the day of the car accident, I sensed that Xiao Riangxin might not love me at all. When the out-of-control vehicle came rushing towards us, Xiao Riangxin didn't hesitate to push me in front of her as a shield. Instinctively, I pushed her aside and was struck by the car with a loud bang, falling to the ground. Looking back now, I was really pathetic. But I just can't understand. Isn't a simp's life still a life? Do we deserve to be trampled on? Meanwhile, I asked someone to investigate Gu Shiyu's background. What I found out completely shattered my worldview. It turned out this guy used to work as a male escort in Hong Kong, even serving multiple clients of both genders at once. The reason he came back to the mainland was because he got caught having an affair with a rich businessman's wife and was severely beaten. The businessman warned him that if he ever set foot in Hong Kong again, he would make sure he disappeared without a trace. Indeed, money can get you any information. I discovered another secret about Gu Shiyu. My investigator told me this guy was a master player, maintaining relationships with another woman while seeing Xiao Ranxin. I saw the photos, and I knew this woman. She was my fitness trainer's wife. Gu Shiyu always used work hours for their dates, under the pretext of accompanying business partners. So accompanying business partners meant going to hotels for 5 hours. I was amazed. He really managed to juggle everything. I secretly rejoiced, because the more flaws in Gu Shiyu's character, the better it was for me. I already had their phone number without needing to search, so I carefully selected several well-angled photos and sent them anonymously. However, I held back one card. I didn't show Gu Shiyu's full face in any of them. I immediately turned off my phone afterward, ignoring all his calls and messages bombardment. Since they enjoy seeking thrills so much, I might as well make it even more thrilling for them. I wonder what expression Xiao Ranxin will have when she discovers how colorful her beloved junior's romantic history is. Meanwhile, Xiao Ranxin hasn't been idle at the company these days, trying to win over shareholders on the board to get my shares sooner. Little did she know that everyone on the board of directors had fought alongside my father throughout their careers. How could they possibly hand over the company based on her few words? So, she and her lover began plotting again. They planned to sabotage my parents' birthday celebration, making their deaths look like an accident. This way, she could legitimately obtain the share transfer agreements from the Zhou family. That despicable woman. My parents treated her so well, yet here she is plotting their deaths. She's completely lost her conscience. To celebrate their anticipated inheritance of my family's wealth in advance, they started playing their twisted games right in my house. Xiao Ranxin locked her crying daughter in the room, and every time the daughter called out Mama, Xiao Ranxin's responding moans grew even louder. My heart burned with rage like a raging fire. Damn these shameless bastards. You think it's thrilling to make my daughter and me part of your sick game? Fine, fine, fine. Just wait and see. I'll make you pay with your lives. The day of my father's birthday banquet was approaching quickly, and the grand show I had been planning for so long was about to unfold. Xiao Ranxin was busy throughout the banquet, appearing to be the perfect daughter-in-law in everyone's eyes. My father patted her shoulder sympathetically and said, Ran, you've been busy for so long. Take a rest. Let others handle the remaining tasks. You don't need to do everything yourself. Xiao Ranxin replied with a caring expression, Dad, it's your 60th birthday today. As the Zhou family's daughter-in-law, this is what I should do. You just enjoy yourself. My father's eyes suddenly welled up with tears, his voice choked with emotion. Ran, we don't know if Ting Yin will ever wake up, and it's been so unfair to you. But don't worry, no matter what happens, you'll always have a place in our Zhou family. Xiao Ranxin forced out a few tears and said, A little hardship and exhaustion mean nothing to me, as long as I can take good care of you both. I stared at Xiao Ranxin's hypocritical face. I couldn't help but spit in disgust. Disgusting, truly disgusting. The guests who came to the birthday banquet were my father's friends and associates. Some were entrepreneurs, others were business partners. To help Gu Shiyu stand out at the banquet, Xiao Ranxin deliberately chose an extremely expensive suit from my wardrobe for him. Not only that, she also picked out a dress for herself that perfectly matched his outfit, making them look like a couple to unsuspecting observers. At the reception, Xiao Ranxin painstakingly began promoting Gu Shiyu to those business partners. She was determined to help Gu Shiyu gain more resources, so he could establish a firm foothold in the company. My assistant couldn't stand it anymore and mockingly said, "Mrs. Zhou, are you working this hard for an outsider? Does Mr. Zhou know about this? How will you explain this to him if he wakes up one day?" "Nonsense, he won't wake up," Xiao Ronxin shouted anxiously. Then she noticed my parents' strange looks and realized her attitude was a bit excessive. With a guilty expression, she said, "The doctor said he would never wake up again in this life." The door was suddenly pushed open. "Who said I wouldn't wake up?" Almost simultaneously, everyone looked towards the doorway. My appearance left everyone present stunned. At this moment, my parents immediately came over to hold my hands, their eyes full of excitement. "Tingyan, when did you wake up? How come we didn't know anything about it?" I held back my tears. "Dad, let's not talk about that right now." I turned back to look at Xiao Ronxin with a smile. Ran. If I heard correctly, you were just saying you hoped I wouldn't wake up, right? Xiao Ronxin was awkwardly at a loss for words. Seeing the situation, my father immediately tried to smooth things over. "We haven't cut the cake yet. Let's cut the cake first." "Yes, let's have Dad cut the cake first." Xiao Ronxin agreed. I looked at the exquisite cake on the stage, right beneath a precariously hanging crystal chandelier. I grabbed my father's hand and said, "Dad, let's skip the cake today. I'll buy you an even bigger one another day." The reason I stopped my father from cutting the cake was because I had overheard Xiao Ronxin's conversation with Gu Xiu that day. She said she had arranged for someone to tamper with the hotel's crystal chandelier, so that when my parents cut the cake together, the light would fall directly on them. And everything would be blamed on the hotel's safety hazards. No one would suspect it was a deliberate plot. My father dismissed my concern. Who celebrates a birthday without cutting the cake? As he spoke, he started walking toward the cake. I shouted anxiously, "Dad, don't go." The next instant, a sudden door-kicking sound interrupted my father's steps toward the cake. Several muscular men walked into the hall, their eyes fierce as if searching for someone. The muscular man aggressively walked up to Gu Xiu. In the next second, the muscular man's fist smashed into his face. Gu Xiu was stunned by the hit and angrily said, "Who are you? Why are you hitting people randomly?" The muscular man sneered, "You bastard, you dare to touch my woman, I'll cripple you today." After speaking, several burly muscular men rushed forward together, throwing punches and kicks from all sides. Gu Xiu was beaten until his face was covered in blood, clutching his groin as he curled up on the ground. It looked painful, really painful. The bystanders just stood there watching, none daring to step forward and intervene. Oh, except for Xiao Ronxin. She shouted at the group in panic. "Who are you people? How can you just beat someone up like this? He was with my wife, don't I have the right to beat him?" Gu Xiu, lying on the ground, immediately protested, "Don't believe what he says, he's a liar, I don't even know his wife." The muscular man kicked Gu Xiu hard. "You dare call me a liar? I'll make you beg for mercy soon." After saying that, the muscular man took out his phone and sent a voice message. "Play the video now." At the mention of the video, a flash of fear crossed Xiao Ronxin's eyes, probably worried that her illicit affair with Gu Xiu would be exposed to everyone. But in the next second, what appeared on the screen was footage of Gu Xiu interacting with women while wearing bizarre outfits. Then came scenes of him being threatened, beaten half to death, and forced to kowtow and apologize. The crowd below erupted in commotion. "Oh my God, am I seeing this right? I was just talking to him. How disgusting. He acts so proper on the surface, but does such filthy things behind closed doors. Truly revolting." The muscular man looked at Xiao Ronxin with a smirk. "If I remember correctly, you're Mr. Zhou's wife. The way you're defending him so strongly, could it be that you're having an affair with him too?" Xiao Ronxin felt guilty at the question, but still strongly denied. "What are you talking about? Who's having an affair with him? No affair? Then why did I just see you hanging onto his arm, giggling uncontrollably?" Xiao Ronxin immediately forced an awkward smile, her voice trembling. "Honey, don't believe what he's saying. I was just trying to bring more business cooperation to the company. That's why I introduced them." I didn't respond to her, instead looking at the disheveled Gu Xiu on the ground and said, "Ah, honey, isn't this the custom-made French suit I wore to the brand's gala ceremony last time? How did it end up on this man?" Another wave of whispers spread through the crowd around them. Xiao Ronxin avoided eye contact and stammered an explanation. "He's now the general manager in our company. For such important events, he needs to dress properly. I saw he didn't have suitable clothes, so I found a set in your closet for him." The muscular man beside them said incredulously, "Chairman Zhou, so he's from your company? This guy is just scum. You should fire him soon, or he'll end up tarnishing your company's reputation. It's not worth the risk." I paused for a moment, then nodded. That makes sense." Then, I looked down at Gu Xiu condescendingly. "I'm sorry, but you're fired. Go to the company tomorrow to terminate your contract. I'll transfer the breach of contract compensation to you on time. Also, take off that suit before you leave." I don't have a habit of lending clothes to others. Gu Shiyu looked at me with hatred in his eyes and said through gritted teeth, Chairman Zhou, it's just a piece of clothing. You're so rich, surely you're not planning to take it back to wear it again. Xiao Ronxin also chimed in. Right, honey, it's just a piece of clothing. Why are you being like T.S.? I stared directly at Xiao Ronxin, my voice cold. Honey, have you forgotten? I have mysophobia. Xiao Ronxin froze for a moment, then awkwardly fell silent. Gu Shiyu stripped off his clothes one by one in front of everyone, until he was left with only bright red underwear. The once prestigious general manager had now become a public laughingstock. The mockery was endless, and countless people were taking photos and recording videos. In this sudden farce, I directly ended the remaining activities. The cake wasn't cut, and I had secretly arranged for the chandelier to be fixed. I didn't notice when Gu Shiyu left. Later I heard that after he went out, those muscular men beat him up again, not even leaving him his underwear. Before the banquet started, I had already sent Gu Shiyu's photo and the hotel's location to that man who shared the same misfortune as me. I said, as long as no one gets killed, do whatever you want. And the reason I didn't expose Xiao Ronxin and his scandal was because I had another plan in mind. The next day, Gu Shiyu's embarrassing situation was all over various social media platforms. He has now become notorious, blacklisted and rejected by all industries, with no one willing to hire him. Looking at Xiao Ronxin, who was distracted in the kitchen, I suddenly called out to her. Wife. She was startled and accidentally broke the soup bowl in her hands. The scalding liquid spilled on the back of her hand, quickly turning it red. She looked at me with a grieved expression. Husband, it hurts so much. I glanced at her hand that had become red and swollen from the burn. In the past, I would have definitely felt heartbroken and immediately tried to blow on it to ease her pain, but now I just coldly said, have the housekeeper apply some medicine later. Just as Xiao Ronxin was about to reach out to touch me, seeking my sympathy, I pushed her hand away. Just thinking about her hands all over Gu Shiyu makes me feel disgusted. It's revolting. Xiao Ronxin looked at me in disbelief. Honey. I ignored her and walked straight out. I really don't know what Xiao Ronxin sees in Gu Shiyu, or if she truly loves him, yet she went behind my back to meet him again. Fine then, I'll make this into a big scene. When I received the text message with their room number, I immediately rushed to the hotel. I got the hotel staff to open the door by claiming I was an acquaintance. I never expected them to be so adventurous, even playing with bondage. But I didn't give them time to react, quickly taking photos with my phone. Xiao Ronxin, how could you do this to me? Both of them were terrified, screaming, and diving under the covers. Xiao Ronxin begged me in tears. Honey, I was wrong. Please forgive me just this once. I slapped her across the face. Damn it. After all I've done for you, this is how you repay me. Yuri's so cheap. This man is just a male escort. Gu Shiyu immediately became upset and int at me while cursing. Who the hell are you talking about? I'll sue you for defamation. My assistant gave Gu Shiyu a hard slap across the face. Being a trained fighter, that slap was powerful, and Gu Shiyu's face visibly swelled up. Stunned by the hit, he could only curl up in the corner while glaring at me viciously. Yes, 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 that look of hating me but being unable to do anything about it. It feels absolutely fantastic. Xiao Ronxin watched in shock. Honey, I didn't mean to. Please forgive me just this once. I angrily said. When you and Gu Shiyu plotted to steal my assets and caused my parents' death, did you ever think this day would come? Xiao Ronxin was stunned, staring at me in disbelief. After a while, she finally spoke. So, you were pretending all along. I brought up divorce to Xiao Ronxin, but she refused. She said she would only sign if I gave her half of my assets and 30% of the company's shares. However, I didn't agree. After doing such things, she still wants to take my assets to give to another man. She must be dreaming. After work in the evening, I went to Xiao Ronxin's home. As soon as I entered, Mrs. Qiao had a stern face, didn't ask if I had eaten, and didn't even offer a cup of hot tea. After sitting for about 10 minutes, Mr. Qiao finally came out from the room, but with a very displeased expression. Zhou Tingyan, our Ranran has been good to you. How could you go behind her back to find another woman? I was truly blind back then, even praising you for being responsible. I was stunned, momentarily confused, but from their words I could tell that I had become the wrongdoer. I couldn't help but sneer. Xiao Ronxin really knew how to play the victim. Seeing that I remained silent, Mrs. Qiao also spoke sarcastically. Back then, you were the one begging our Ranran to marry you, but now you're rejecting her. Zhou Tingyan, you've really disappointed us. I said calmly. Mom, I came home today specifically to discuss this matter. Please don't get anxious. Why don't we call Xiao Ronxin out here to clarify things in person? At that moment, Xiao Ronxin happened to come out from the room, her face full of guilt. Honey, why are you here? She asked. Xiao Ronxin, what exactly did you tell your parents? Do you really want me to expose all your misdeeds in front of your parents before you'll be satisfied? Dad, you don't know yet, but the one who did wrong is actually your daughter. I then took out a voice recorder and played a selected segment, placing it on the table. From it came the conversation between Xiao Ronxin and another person plotting to kill my parents. After that, I turned it off. I looked at Xiao Ronxin and said coldly, I won't let Dad hear the rest. I don't want to pollute his ears. At this moment, Xiao's father's eyes were filled with shock, his voice trembling uncontrollably. I spent over 20 years raising you, yet you commit such shameless, inhumane acts. After saying that, he slapped Xiao Ronxin's face, causing her to stagger backwards several steps, nearly falling to the ground. Even though Mrs. Qiao loved her daughter dearly, she couldn't help but scold her. We Qiao family doesn't have a daughter like you. Don't call me mother anymore. Xiao Ronxin knelt on the ground, pleading through tears. Mom, I know I was wrong. Please forgive me just this once. I'll never dare to do it again. After they finished crying and scolding, I unhurriedly took out the divorce agreement I had prepared in advance. I said calmly, Xiao Ronxin, sign it. I admit I am a very practical person. When I loved you, I was willing to give you anything. But now that the love is gone, I want to minimize all losses. Xiao Ronxin stared at it for a while, then frowned and said, You want to take back the 30% shares in my possession? I nodded. Reading further, she asked in disbelief, You want custody of our daughter, yet you're only giving me 500,000 for the divorce? I nodded. Xiao Ronxin's expression changed immediately. I don't agree. For divorce, I want 100 million. After hearing this, Xiao's father slapped her again and angrily said, You disgraceful thing. Our Qiao family has always been upright and disciplined. I never thought I would have such a malicious daughter. Do you want your mother and me to become the laughingstock of our neighbors? If you don't sign the papers, you might as well prepare for your parents' funeral. I cannot lose face like this no matter what. Xiao Ronxin's parents were both senior university professors. They frequently gave lectures at prestigious universities and appeared in television interviews, regarded as role models of integrity in people's eyes. Moreover, Xiao's father was someone who greatly valued family honor and certainly wouldn't let a woman ruin his reputation in his later years. However, in his eyes, Xiao Ronxin had always been an obedient and sensible daughter. Unless I present decisive evidence, it would be difficult for him to believe what I'm saying. I knew that only Qiao's father could restrain Xiao Ronxin, and only his intervention could prevent my plan from failing. Although Xiao Ronxin was very reluctant, she eventually signed due to her father's authority. After walking out, I let out a long breath. Looking at the divorce agreement in my hand, I smiled. All the patience I had endured was finally worth it. Our divorce went smoothly. On the day she left, she practically cleared out everything valuable from the villa. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her about it. Even if she hadn't taken them, I would have thrown or sold those things away anyway. Just thinking about how that house contained their scent, hers and Gu Shiyu's, and had been touched by their dirty hands made my stomach turn. Moreover, I had people demolish every room inside, renovated it completely, and then sold it. I feared it would disturb myself, and others. I saw Xiao Ronxin again several months later, disheveled and wandering the streets, looking quite destitute. And the reason she became like this was all because of Gu Shiyu's harm. I heard that Gu Shiyu, in order to get money from Xiao Ronxin, went to her house specifically to make trouble. Xiao Ronxin refused to give him any. So he would stand below her apartment building every day with a megaphone, claiming he had an affair with Xiao Ronxin and had contracted various diseases, demanding money from her for treatment. Good grief. When I learned about this, I immediately went to the hospital for a full body checkup, and fortunately, the doctor said I was very healthy. Not only was I fine, but having 2 children in 3 years wouldn't be a problem. After Xiao Ronxin's scandal became known to everyone, her parents kicked her out and moved away. One day, I suddenly saw a news article on my phone. 2 bodies were found in a rental apartment in a certain residential complex, 1 male and 1 female. Both bodies had been stabbed more than 10 times. Clearly, they had killed each other. The blood everywhere was truly horrifying. My daughter suddenly came over. Dad, why are you crying? I smiled as I held my daughter in my arms and kissed her forehead. Softly said, Dad won't cry. A year after the divorce, I met my current wife. She loves me deeply, and I love her just as much. One night, after my son fell asleep, my wife suddenly threw herself into my arms. Honey, I have a surprise for you. What surprise? I looked at my wife curiously, thinking that since my daughter was asleep, we finally had time to ourselves. My wife, blushing, said shyly, What are you thinking about? You won't have any chance for that anymore. Huh? I looked at her puzzled. My wife smiled and took out a paper from the drawer, handing it to me. Take a look, Dot. I took it and froze. It was a pregnancy test report. After reading it, I was overwhelmed with joy. Honey, you're pregnant. My wife nodded with a smile. Yes, the doctor said it might be twins, Dot. I excitedly embraced my wife. Really? That's wonderful. I'm going to be a father again. My wife gave me a kiss and said that even though I was in my 30s, I still acted like an excited young boy. That night, we held each other tightly,